Object model pattern. What is a page object model pattern? So page object model is also called as in general, but they mean difference when we go in-depth definitions. But in general, we call page object model, page object repository, page object factory is a pattern, but not a framework. So in general, these are same, but when we see individual definitions, both are different. What is POM? POM, page object model. POM means it's a short name for page object model. Talks about how we can manage or maintain the page objects. So each and every page will have page objects, nothing but elements. So with the elements only, we will interact. So the elements which are there in each and every page are called as page objects, or I can also call this page elements. Nothing but web elements in that specific page. So when we say page object model, it talks about managing or maintaining page objects for multiple test cases. So by this, you will not understand anything. Let me try to explain you. Suppose if we have multiple test cases in our project, for each and every case, we will include certain number of elements on the web page. Suppose you take this Amazon website. So this is the home page, and similarly for sign in, you will have another page. For create your account, you will have another page. Likewise, we can have multiple test cases for each and every page. So for every test case, we will include certain number of elements. So if you talk about this registration page, in this particular registration page, you have your name element, mobile number element, password element. Yes, they are text boxes. Instead of text boxes, in some another web application, you can have some drop downs. So whatever the elements in that particular page, we will include with certain number of elements in the test classes, along with its test methods. By this, you will have some confusion. Please wait. So here the main point is, instead of including everything in one file, we will maintain test cases and web elements or the page elements or the page objects in two different classes, in two different files. So this pattern, this way of maintaining or organizing is called as page object model. So if you can see, what are the disadvantages of page object model, you will get to know. See, let's say without page object model, or we can say the normal approach. So when I say the normal approach, so if you can see, let me go to PyCharm. Let me create some day directory of 39. So in this, I'm just creating a Python file. So nothing but page object model, and just creating with some random name. So in this, if you can see, this is a general test case. So in this general test case, or I can also say this is a general test script without page object model. So like this, for the same web application, in the same home page, like for entering the username and password, you'll have the same locator, same web elements. So in that case, if you have some multiple test cases, so definitely you need to define this each and every element in that each and every test case. It is the duplication problem. Also, if you want to change, suppose in future, if the locator is changed, So you have to go to each and every test case and you have to change each and every web element ID. So when we talk about this normal approach, when I say normal approach without using page object model, first disadvantage is duplication of elements. And even though you duplicate it, but if in future, if the element is updated, if its XPath is updated, if its ID is updated, definitely you need to go to each and every page or every place where you have defined those elements and you need to update the elements. These are the two disadvantages when we talk about normal approach. So what are the problems? Let me write that so that you can understand. So when we talk about the problems in normal approach, means without page object model, same elements we are identifying in every test case. So the duplication of elements is one problem. Suppose we have automated 10 test cases. All 10 test cases use a login page element. So suppose if you want to search for or if you want to order any item, definitely first thing you need to do is you need to sign in. So during sign in, after that, you can do whatever the things which you want is application. So suppose if you have 10 different tasks to be performed on this particular web application, first thing for each and every task, but I mean, out of 10 tasks, definitely you need to log in into this particular application and you need to perform those tasks. So every test case in 10 test cases, definitely you will have login elements. So in the same way, login page elements will be present. And suppose if tomorrow, if the page element got modified or some attribute got changed, then we need to go and modify those elements in every test case. So the another problem is updating the elements. To overcome these problems, we will go for page object model approach. It's not a framework, it's a pattern. When I say pattern, it talks about managing or maintaining. So to overcome these problems, we'll go for page object model approach. So in the page object model approach or the pattern, for every page in the application, we will create separate class called page object classes. For the home page, you'll have one class, that particular class containing all the elements in that particular page along with the actions on those particular elements. So for sign in, you'll have another page object class. In that page object class, we will have that particular page elements along with their actions. We'll see in a while. Also, page object class contains the elements belonging to a specific page. That's what we have discussed along with their action method. So when I say action method, suppose you take this particular page, nothing but the sign in page. I have created one class. So what are the elements in this? Email or mobile phone text box and thereafter continue button. So on the text box, you will enter some text. On the continue button, you will perform some click action. So what are the actions you are performing here? One is sending text to this particular input or text box and thereafter clicking the button. So these are the actions. Apart from after identifying these particular elements, you will perform some actions on these elements. So you will include all these elements and their actions in one page. That particular page is called as page object class. So when we specify elements and their action methods in the page objects class, then we'll only specify test methods in another class. So where we will call those page object classes, we will interact with them. This is how we will perform the action. So this is page object model approach. So there are problems with normal approach. So that is the reason we have moved to page object model. Before going to this, let me make you understand with 3 important points. These are very important. So when we enter into a project in a real time, the first task is, if you are developing a project from the scratch, the first task is to create a page object model class by analyzing the test cases and number of pages. So page object class should contain elements which we have already discussed along with their action methods. Elements, nothing but elements are identified by using locators. Along with their action methods, also constructor. Constructor is used to initialize instance variables. So page object class should contain some structure. That structure contains locators as well as constructor as well as action methods. And the thumb rule is number of locators must be equal to number of action methods. How many action methods we need to define? So it depends on number of locators. This is what a basic thumb rule. You can understand this. With the help of this, you can create a page object model approach. How we can create? So let me go to PyCharm. So this is what the simple or the general test case without page object model. So when we execute this, what it will do, it will try to open that particular website, enter username and password, and it will try to assert the title, whether the title is equal to this particular expected title or not. So if it is not equal, then definitely they will get assertion error, that is secondary. But the thing is, it is what the general script. But if you see here, in this particular test case or the test script, everything, if you want to do on the web page, definitely you need to log in to your that particular web application by entering email and the password. Likewise, if you are having some 10 test cases, you need to repeat this again and again. After entering username and password, you need to click on login button. These are repeated 10 times. Suppose if ID got changed to some email 123, definitely you need to go to each and every test case. You need to modify that email to email 123. So the two problems is duplication at multiple places, also updation of those particular elements. These are the challenges in this normal approach. So what I will do, instead of this zigzag or the normal approach, where I will have duplicacy and updation problems, I will go for page object model. So first thing I need to do is, let me go to this particular web page. So I'm just going to this particular web page, logging into that particular web application. This is what I am doing. So when I open this particular URL, it landed me on this particular web page. So for every page, you'll have one separate page object class. That separate page object class will have elements, nothing but locators and their action methods. So this is one page. So what I will do, I will just go to PyCharm. So you leave about this pom.py. This is not the page object model class. So let me try to rename this, otherwise you will confuse. Refactor, rename without page object model. This is what about without page object model. So what I will do, I will just create one page object module. In that I will specify page object class. So go to this directory, create a Python file. So login page objects, login page objects. So when I say login page objects, nothing but elements or the web elements belongs to that specific page. This is what it says. So in this particular web page, I'm having email text box. It is one element. Password text box. This is another element. This is also remember me is another element, but I don't want this. So login is another element. So total 4 elements. Instead of these 4 elements, I will use only 3 elements. This is what my requirement is. This particular web page is having only 3 elements. So what I will do, I will just create a class. So I'm just creating a class as login page. And inside this login page, I'm just defining that username, password, and login web elements. So for defining those web elements, you need to have some meaningful name. So if you can see here, this particular page is having email text box, password text box, login button. So when you are defining those in the classes, definitely you need to give some meaningful names. So text underscore, I can say text box. When anybody sees your code, they need to identify simply. So username underscore ID. So this is the type of web element. This is the name of that particular web element. This is the XPath, or I can say ID. You are just identifying that element with the help of ID attribute. So if you can see here, I'm just inspecting this. So after inspecting, you can see this particular email text box is having these many attributes. So what I'm doing, instead of these many attributes, I'm just taking ID. So when I take that ID, I will just specify that particular locator here. So that particular ID is having email. Also, similarly, password is also a text box. Instead of username, I will just specify password. And it is also identified with the help of ID attribute. So I can specify that ID attribute as password. If you can inspect, you will get to know this. Similarly, I will also specify button underscore login button. So login underscore XPath. I am just identifying that element, login element, with the help of XPath. So what I am doing, I am just identifying that with XPath. So what I can do with this particular username text box, password text box, and login text box. First of all, when I log in into that particular application, first thing what I need to do, I need to clear. So already email and password is populated. So what I can do, I need to clear this. First thing I need to do. Thereafter, I need to enter my username and password. So 3 things I'm just doing. First, identifying, clearing the values in this particular text box. Not only email ID as well as password, and thereafter clicking the login button. So for each and every action specific to that particular element, I will just create one method. So if you can see here, for username, I have created one method. For password, I have created another method. For logging in, clicking the login button, I have created another method. So this is what the thumb rule which we have already discussed. Number of locators. When I say number of locators, indirectly number of elements. Number of elements is equal to number of action methods. So I'm having 3 elements: username, password, and login. So it's a thumb rule. By default, we can use this particular shortcut. So to define number of methods. So for 3 elements or 3 locators, I'm having 3 methods. So this particular page is called at the time of test case execution, that we will see. Also, this by is used to identify that particular element. So whatever the attribute which I want to find that particular element, I will specify that attribute here by dot id by dot xpath. So you need to import from selenium dot webdriver dot common dot by import by. This is what we will do. Also, along with locators and their action methods, you need to have constructor. What is the use of that constructor? So in each and every method, you are using self.driver. Self.driver. So leave about the driver. When you use self, self means You are accessing the class related things, whether it is a variable. So for initializing a class variable, instance variable, you are just defining that constructor. So once you define a constructor, you can use that constructor as a class variable inside multiple methods. So this is what about login page objects. Let me try to reformat this. Self.driver is equal to driver. We need to be very careful whenever we are using this. Otherwise, there may be a chance to get an error. Unindent ident. Always a page object class will contain locators, constructor, and action methods. So what you will do right now, you will create a test. Nothing but you need to log in into that particular web application and you need to interact with this particular element. So what you will do, you will just create a Python file, test underscore login. So in this, what you will do, you will just specify what are the initializations which we need to do before logging into that particular web application. After logging into that particular web application, you can maximize window, you can enter username and password. So these are all the things what you can do. So first thing what I can do here is from Selenium import WebDriver, and thereafter I will just define a class for each and everything in the page object model. We will define with a class. We'll specify in the class test login. So inside this, I'm just creating a method. Inside this method, test underscore login. You can give any another name which you want. So it is a method. We need to define it with self. So first thing is options. I'm defining a variable. So it's WebDriver dot Chrome options. Also, you need to specify options dot add experimental option detach, and you need to specify true. This is what a general script. So this is options WebDriver dot Chrome options, and thereafter you can specify like this directly. So you will initialize the driver variable, and thereafter with that help of the driver variable, you can open that particular URL. So but this driver variable needs to be a class variable. So inside a method to define a variable as a class variable, I can use self. Why I need to use self? To define any variable as a class variable. So if it is a class variable, if like this method I am having multiple methods, I can use that class variable. So thereafter what I can do, I can maximize that browser window. After opening that particular URL, I can maximize. So the other thing is here you need to be very careful. After maximizing, this is how the page looks like. You need to clear, or you need to interact with this email text box and password text box. For this, already we have created a class in the login page objects. So first thing you need to do is you need to import from login page objects, import login page class. So I'm just importing this login page class. So after importing this login page class, since it is a class, definitely I need to create an instance of it. Nothing but an object of it. So what I can do, I can just create an object self dot. I'm just giving that a name LP, nothing but login page. So once I have imported this login page, I'm just passing a driver variable, nothing but self dot driver. So for this class, when I just call it this or initialized an instance of this particular class, this constructor is automatically called. So for this constructor, driver parameter needs to be sent. So the driver parameter here, it is nothing but self dot driver. So once I send this driver parameter, it is assigned here as a class variable. So I can use it in multiple methods if it is a class variable. So thereafter what I can do, with the help of that instance only, I will just call the methods inside that particular login page objects. So first thing is text user box, or I can also call as set username. This is what the method which we have defined. So for this username, what I can do, I can just pass admin@yourstore.com. So this is what the username. Similarly, self.lp.set password. I can just specify the password as admin. After username, after password, I will call this login method. Self.lp. I can just call that as click login. Yes, this is what you are seeing here. I will just call that particular method. So when I call that particular method, respective steps will be executed. Respective statements in that particular method is executed. Thereafter, I can just assert self.act underscore title. This is the variable which I am defining. Act underscore title means actual title is equal to self.driver.title. So when I use driver.title, it actually fetches the title of that particular web page. So thereafter, what I can do, I can self close that particular web page, self.driver.close. Thereafter, I can assert whether the actual title is equal to expected title or not. If it is not equal to expected title, then assertion will be false. This particular whole test method will be failed because we'll get assertion error. So I'm executing it here. Run Python test for test login. So this is what entered username and password. It has logged into this particular web page, and if you can see, it has passed. This assertion is also true. So that is the reason why you can see it is passed 100%. Right. If I want to execute it in the from the terminal, what I can do, what is the string which I can pass to this particular terminal is definitely you need to use pytest -s-v. And the day 39, I am having test login.py. I can just execute that. If you can just execute it, it will be like this. So it has maximized, entered username and password. Yes, it is clicked on login. So that particular expected title matches to that actual title. So thereafter, you can see the status as passed. In this way, for each and every web page, you will create a separate class and respected test method will be created in another file. Page objects in one file, test methods in another file. This is what about a page object model. So before going to make you how even more this particular page object model needs to be used, let me define some points. So variables creating inside the methods. Definitely, if we want to make them as a class variable, definitely we need to use self keyword. Also, some of the important thumb rules. Page object class should have elements belonging to single page, that what we have defined every time. Every web page will have separate page object class in separate file. So one page object class should always represent one single page. Page object class. Page object class, we should not hardcode any data. If you see here, this is the page object class. In this particular page object class, you should not hardcode any data. Yes, we have hardcoded this ID. But this is not the case when we are doing a project. We will not hardcode any data. Also, we should not include any validations and assertions in page object class. If you see, this is a page object class. We have not included any assertions or validations. We have just added those assertions or validations in login method. So this is what about page object model.